Welcome back, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for our Thursday preview episode. Um, First off, I wanted to take the time to say thank you so much for everyone that has tuned in via social media, YouTube, Spotify, any sort of um, platform that you found us on. It truly means so much to me, and I know it means a lot to Leif too. To see you guys' support and to just be encouraged the way that we have been over the past few days. So first off, big thank you to everyone out there, and make sure that you're letting us know what you want to see on the show, anything that you want to see improved, build around, or any games or recaps that you want to see added. So with that said, we're gonna jump right in. It's Preview Thursday. We got a big slate of games this weekend, but first, I don't think there's a better place to start than the marquee matchup for the Big Ten opening up this weekend. Number 18 is traveling to number 21 Minnesota. They're in Minneapolis, 7:30 Eastern kick. Before we even on ABC game day game, before we even get into any of like the players or the stats or anything like that, who would have thought that the first thing we were talking about is the weather that's going to be happening in Minnesota? High of 31 degrees, 26 by nighttime, occasional snow, showers, winds at 5 to 10 miles an hour. What is it going to be like for these players? So this is their first game that they're going to be playing this year, and it's going to be there's almost an inch of accumulation projected.
Yeah, no, it'll be an interesting first game for sure, especially since they haven't had as much practice time as some of these other schools to get acclimated to playing with each other, much less playing with each other in snow against a ranked opponent. So that'll be interesting for sure, and it's particularly interesting for Michigan because Joe Milton, their starting quarterback, has only attempted 7 passes last season. And snow football is an interesting game in and of itself. So that'll be a fun one to watch.
Yeah, redshirt sophomore QB Joe Milton there only has 59 passing yards on his ledger so far, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. They are bringing back their leading rusher and their leading pass catcher, so they have some experience there on offense. But yeah, there's always been kind of that era around a Jim Harbaugh quarterback. He was a quarterback himself. He's highly touted as bringing in these great QBs, but in his time there in Michigan, it's almost seemed like some of them have been a little wanting, leaving a little bit left to be desired. What can we expect here with this redshirt sophomore coming in?
He's thrown in a tough spot, especially because Harbaugh's he's on a little bit of a short leash now. I mean, he's had tons of great recruits come in and out of the program, and he still got them on the roster. And he had Shea Patterson last season, and he was a top-tier quarterback recruit a few seasons ago, transferred from Ole Miss. And now Joe Milton's there, and he's being asked to do the hard thing in the Big Ten is dominate the Big Ten and save Harbaugh's job. I mean, maybe not necessarily this season, but he's got to play very well due to a streak, as you mentioned, of just poor, underwhelming quarterback play, not necessarily poor. And then to make it worse, they had their other quarterback, Dylan McCaffrey, opt out and is seeking transfer. So he's got a lot of pressure on his shoulders, and it'll be interesting to see how he handles it, not only in Minnesota, but throughout the whole season.
Yeah, we mentioned the returning running back, Zach Charbonnet. He had 726 rushing yards last season, and then wide receiver Ronnie Bell is their leading pass catcher coming back. They still have to replace a lot on offense, though, on the outside there. They lost Donovan Peoples-Jones, Nico Collins, a couple of really talented wideouts that they might be missing in this matchup.
Yeah, that's a tall task to replace the explosive receiver in Donovan Peoples-Jones, who ran a 4.35, and Nico Collins got a lot of receptions. Ronnie Bell's their lead pass catcher, so they bring in a lot of talent, but chemistry will be interesting, especially between quarterback and receivers, since Milton has only thrown 7 pass attempts in the past season. So it'll be interesting to see what rapport he has with his receivers and as well as Charbonnet out of the backfield. Their offensive line is pretty solid. They did lose Cesar Ruiz, first-round pick at center, but they returned a lot of players on that front. And that'll be important to see protect Milton, give him some easy throws, and get establish a good rapport with his receivers.
Yeah, for sure. I think the experience of the Michigan O-line is definitely going to play an impact in the game, especially if it's bad weather conditions. It's their first game of the season, so I think that'll probably avoid some of those sloppy penalties and early mistakes that you see just due to jitters and not playing for a while. Let's flip the ledger a little bit. Let's talk about some defense. Michigan's always kind of renowned for, especially in the past few years, having a very stout defense that keeps them in games. Jabril Peppers is the name that comes to mind. Jadavian Clowney, is another guy that comes to mind. I'm sorry, he did not play for Michigan. He crushed the Michigan running back.
Yeah, he killed Vincent Hill.
Can't really think about defense against Michigan if you don't think about that hit. Anyway, my bad on that one. But yeah, let's talk some defense. What do you got for us there?
I think they'll be stout. Harbaugh coach teams are typically very stout defensively. They're good in all three levels. They do lose a lot of talent and production from their front seven, though. They lost Kaliki Hudson, their top tackler, with 102 tackles. Jordan Glasgow, 89 tackles, and their lead sack man, Josh Uche, also the draft with 7.5 sacks. That said, I think they'll be solid, but that's a lot of production and experience lost. So, it's hard to replace that type of production from three key players, but Michigan is as well suited to do so as any.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's talk Minnesota. Tanner Morgan coming in his redshirt junior season. He started all last year, threw for 3,253 yards, 30 touchdowns, and only 7 interceptions, 66% completion rate. What can we expect from him taking another step forward? Because he came with Coach PJ Fleck, and so what can we expect from the Minnesota offense moving forward?
I think you'll get a high dosage of Rashad Bateman. He's a junior wide receiver, and Tanner Morgan takes care of the ball. As you saw, 30-7 touchdown to interception ratio is really impressive and extremely important in a Big Ten conference that has a lot of stout defenses that thrive off of takeaways. So for him to be an experienced quarterback, came with the coach, knows the system, taking care of the ball is paramount in football. And, the more time of possession, the better off you are. And I think he's going to be steady throughout the season and keep Minnesota in contention all throughout Big Ten play.
Yeah, we talked about experience there with Tanner Morgan. There's also experience in the second half of that backfield. Mohamed Ibrahim is a redshirt junior running back. He ran for 604 yards on 114 attempts last season, scored 7 touchdowns, and led them actually in yards per carry. So he wasn't their leading rusher, but he knows how to handle the load with all that coming as a backup to Rodney Smith last season.
Yeah, for sure. I liked what I saw in limited doses from him. And I just trust Tanner Morgan as a quarterback. I think anytime you're willing to put the ball in the air for 3,253 yards and only have 7 interceptions in a Big Ten conference that runs the ball frequently, that means he's a trusted quarterback and Fleck's an aggressive play caller. And they'll be an interesting team to monitor. They lose Tyler Johnson, former wide receiver, but that said, I think they've got enough talent on the flanks and a good decision maker in Tanner Morgan to really compete in the Big Ten Conference.
For sure. I think this is just such an intriguing matchup to open the season with, because basically Michigan is on the outside looking in the Big Ten East. You have Ohio State and Penn State who have kind of shown that they're a step above at this point in time, above a Michigan team who's kind of struggling to find their identity. And then you have Minnesota, who had one of their best seasons in forever last year, went 11-2, lost a big game, their biggest game in program history, to Wisconsin. And they're kind of in that shadow of Wisconsin as the big brother in the Big Ten West. So I just think it's such an intriguing matchup that we have here to open the season, to see who comes out ready to play and whether that's going to be really unpredictable. So I'm really looking forward to this one. Let's touch base on one of the factors that I think is really going to actually make or break this game. You have Let's see. We have redshirt senior kicker and punter for Michigan. And then we have a freshman and a sophomore kicker and punter for Minnesota. So special teams is often touted as one of those areas of the game that you can lose the game in, or you don't really win the game in special teams, but you can lose the game in a heartbeat. So true freshman long snapper there for Michigan too. What are we looking for there?
Especially in inclement weather, a slippery ball, and one bad snap can really hurt you. As Michigan learned against Michigan State a few years ago, you can have a punt and all of a sudden you lose a game. Like you said, you put it really well. You don't typically win games on special teams, but you definitely can lose some. So whoever mitigates mistakes is definitely favored, especially in inclement weather.
Yeah, so let's put a bookmark on that one for our recap Sunday episode. Let's see if special teams comes into play there. The way we're kind of structuring this whole episode, I forgot to mention at the beginning, is we're going to go through our previews of the games, and then at the end we have a slate of games listed down there that we're going to actually make some picks for. So we're going to save our expertise, our pick expertise for later in the show, because this one will for sure come around during that time. Let's move on a little bit. One of the sleeper matchups I think this week is actually in the American Conference. Number 9 Cincinnati is traveling to number 16 SMU. They're kicking off at 9 Eastern on ESPN2. That's in Dallas, so we can expect some more normalcy in the weather activity there. 5 to 10 mile an hour winds is the only thing that could possibly play into that. ESPN FBI has Cincinnati with a 54.1% chance to win. What do you think about that?
I think Cincinnati to this point has proven more. Their defense has shown they have the capacity to stop teams. That said, I think SMU's played more quality opponents. They beat a Tulane team that's decent, and they beat them in overtime. They've played a close game, which I think is important. Cincinnati's had a few routes. I really like Shane Buechele as a quarterback. And they've played 5 games as opposed to Cincinnati's 3, but Cincinnati has definitely shown that they can dominate a game more than SMU has shown.
Yeah, you touched on Buechele. Guy's going off this year. He's got 119 completions for 1,710 yards already in 5 games and 12 touchdowns. 12 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. This guy's got to be on the Heisman Trophy watch list for people, right?
Yeah, for sure. He's always been a talented quarterback. He even started as a freshman in Texas and recently transferred to SMU a few years ago. He has all the talent in the world, and he's in a really nice system for him. Gets the ball out quickly, an air raid offensive scheme under Sonny Dykes and Garrett Riley, Lincoln Riley's brother. Guess it runs in the family, some good offense, and then that Riley family. So
a few more points to touch on in this one. Cincinnati's only allowing 12.3 points per game. That's kind of an impressive stat for a team in the American Conference, which is known to kind of have those Memphis SMU games, Memphis Cincinnati games where they just really run up the score. 12.3 points per game is a pretty big stat, and it's going to be something that SMU is going to have to overcome, especially when they're allowing 25.5. So something they're going to have to overcome there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. 12.3 is really, really impressive considering the American, like you mentioned, Memphis and UCF and Houston and Navy all run kind of intricate offenses, as well as SMU, of course. And to overcome some of those opponents, although some of them haven't been as touted rosters, talented rosters, but 12.3, anytime you're giving up fewer than 2 touchdowns a game, that's impressive.
Yeah, for sure. But on the other hand, we talked about Buechele, 1,700 yards. He already has 12 touchdowns. So if there's anyone that can drive that stat up a little higher, it's probably him. Is it kind of safe to say that whichever defense can produce a stop or whoever has the ball last might have the chance to win the game in this one?
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree. Absolutely. I trust Buechele at the end of the game. That said, if one team can get an early stop, maybe a turnover, that could be an enormous game. Just one more possession, whether last possession or just a takeaway, that could be a huge stop in the game and the turning point in this whole American Conference race, because these seem to be the 2 best contenders at this point.
For sure. I'm not the biggest sports bettor in the world. The over-under for this game is set at 56 points. So for all of you out there that might not know what that means, is they're saying that combined the two teams will score 56 points. That's a little over 25 apiece. Is it safe to say that we can hammer the over in this one, that they're going to score more than that?
I do like sports betting a little bit. College football is a tough one, though, but I'd feel pretty confident at 56. They'll eclipse 56 points.
Yeah, I think I might actually have to get into it this week and go ahead and hit the hammer on that over button. But an interesting matchup here, huge ramifications moving forward for this conference. These are probably two of the best non-Power 5 teams in the country. So this is a chance for them to really shine and really say we deserve to play in a massive New Year's Six bowl game or even an outside shot of the college football playoff. Cincinnati's ranked 9th, so they're already in the top 10. Clearly the committee has given them reason to believe that they have a valid shot at making that.
Yeah, absolutely. You touched on it. There's one New Year's Six game that goes to a non-Power 5 school each year, and this could be the year for these two teams. And also, these two teams may well match up again. The American Conference, these two look to be the cream of the crop, and they could play each other once again in the American Conference Championship game. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if that happens, and the winner of that goes to a New Year's Six bowl. So if you're a college football fan that doesn't know too much about the American Conference, this is the game to watch and alert you to the good teams over there. It's in a supremely underrated conference.
Exactly. You touched on it. This game, well, Cincinnati did play a team twice last season. They played Memphis twice, and Memphis beat them in the American Conference and got that New Year's Six bowl berth. And they actually played Penn State pretty well in that Cotton Bowl. It was a really high scoring game. Not a lot of defense played. So have your eyes peeled for this game, 9:00 Eastern. So it's a little late for the Eastern time zone folks, but it's one you probably should stay up for if you're an avid sports fan. All right, we're going to move on briefly to another top 20 matchup. We got number 17 Iowa State heading into Stillwater to take on number 6 Oklahoma State. That's at 3:30 p.m. Eastern time on Fox. So we got a big FPI boost here for Oklahoma State, 73.6% chance to win. What do you make of that one?
That seems high. I do like the Cowboys' chance to win in Stillwater, but 73.6 against a team like Iowa State, who's proven they can beat the best teams in the country. They beat a very talented Oklahoma team. That seems high. But I don't know. Chuba Hubbard's an impressive running back that could guide you to that almost assured victory that FBI seems to have Oklahoma State winning.
Yeah, Heisman Trophy candidate there, Chuba Hubbard. He's off to a good start. They've only played 3 games. He has 339 yards on 69 carries and 4 touchdowns in those games. So great start for him. Another key talking point. We talked about Cincinnati's points allowed per game. Oklahoma State's only allowing 9 points per game in the Big 12, which is almost more impressive than 12.3 in the American. So what do you think about that one?
I think that's a stat just like Cincinnati that's only going to rise, but that's certainly impressive in a conference touted for having no defense. That 9 points a game is incredible. And that's what has them at 6 in the country. Quite frankly, like all the teams in the Big 12 can score. So if you're limiting teams and you can score, that's how you win games, obviously. And Oklahoma State to this point has figured out a formula of scoring well and limiting their opponents, and it's worked for them.
For sure. I think Oklahoma State there at number 6 is probably one of the last chances for the Big 12 to have a playoff implication team based around there. Let's talk about Brock Purdy real quick. He's playing really well. Again, he has 912 yards and 4 touchdowns, only 1 interception. Do you think he has what it takes to go in there to Stillwater and knock off number 6 Oklahoma State?
Yeah, for sure. He reminds me actually a little bit of Tanner Morgan at Minnesota, tying back the previous part, is an experienced quarterback with talent, and he can take care of the ball while taking shots. And that's a thing. You know, a lot of players like Spencer Rattler is the most talented quarterback in the Big 12, but he makes mistakes. I think Purdy takes care of the ball and is able to get points for his Iowa State Cyclone offense. but he doesn't risk losing the ball and allowing points for the defense. And I think he really can. He's a key in this game, and how well he can control the game, control the clock, and keep the Oklahoma State offense off the field by making that defense who's played so well work, because some of the teams have let them off the hook with turnovers.
For sure. Iowa State allowing 27.5 points per game. They're going to have to buckle that down if they're going to try and slow down Chuba Hubbard and the Cowboy offense. Moving forward, we got some fan shout-outs, some fan requests this week for us to cover. A friend of the podcast, JT, requested us to talk about number 2 Alabama heading to Tennessee, 3:30 kickoff on CBS. Tennessee coming in off 2 losses. They lost by 23 to Georgia, and then last weekend unexpectedly got blown out by Kentucky, 34-7. What do we make of Tennessee moving forward, and do we think they have much chance against the number 2 team in the land?
Well, I'll start with your second question. I don't think they have much of a chance at all against Alabama, especially because Alabama's only getting better with Mac Jones. But what I make of Tennessee is similar to their last couple of years, and they seem to have it going. At the beginning there, they beat a pretty good South Carolina team that just beat Auburn, and they looked good in another game. And then losing to Georgia, they were up most of the first half in that, so that scoreline's slightly misleading, but they got blown out in the second half. And this Kentucky game, they let Terry Wilson run all over them. And if you're going to allow a quarterback with average speed to run all over you, I'd be quite concerned about Najee Harris, Jalen Waddle, and Devontae Smith yards after the catch and just running out of the backfield in general. And I don't think they're going to have much of a chance in this game, and their only chance is to put up points, because this Alabama offense looks potent.
Yeah, 100% hit the nail on the head there. I think Alabama's offense is probably one of the best in the country. Maybe Clemson has a say in that for sure. But the combination of Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith might be the best wide receiver combination I've seen in a very long time. And then you touched on, Najee Harris, and Mac Jones is a very prolific deep ball thrower. Watch for that, because Jalen Waddle's always running free, and Mac Jones seems always find him. Another point I wanted to touch on here is Alabama's defense. There's a lot of question marks around that defense. I saw them get blown off the ball a couple times last weekend against Georgia. I actually thought Georgia needed to run the ball more instead of trusting their young quarterback against that Alabama secondary. Do we think Tennessee can move the ball to keep this within shouting distance near the third or fourth quarter and score some points on Alabama? Because they've looked vulnerable in times.
Yeah, they for sure have looked vulnerable. And in fact, in watching that Georgia-Alabama game in the first half, I thought that Zamir White, like you said, they were creating holes. They were pushing the Alabama defensive line a little bit, and they just didn't hit the big plays. And Stetson Bennett, the fourth, wasn't experienced enough, didn't have the savvy to beat the Alabama secondary that's playing all right. That said, I don't think the Tennessee offensive line is of the caliber of Georgia. In fact, Georgia's probably the top 3 or 4 offensive lines in the nation. So I don't think Alabama's going to get bullied up front like that again. But you did see Ole Miss score a ton of points against Alabama. So I think Tennessee can score. I just don't think they can score enough to keep it close.
I think that's a really valid point. I don't think they can score enough either. But I do think if someone in the SEC is going to beat Alabama, it's going to have to happen quickly, because they're only getting better every week. And when we know Nick Saban's going to do something to get that defense under control. Second fan request that we got this weekend was one of my good friends, Tavis, requested us to cover a more local game if you're Utah-centric. Utah State is starting their season in the Mountain West, and it's probably one of the best games of the Mountain West of the entire season, right? They're heading to Boise, Idaho to take on Boise State. 7 p.m. Eastern kick on FS1. So that's a primetime spot for this game to fall into. And what are we going to expect here for Utah State, Boise State?
Well, shout out to Tavis, because that's a sneaky game. Like that'll be an entertaining one, and one of the better games in the country this year, and a loaded docket with the Big Ten coming back. You got almost all the conferences, and no one's going to think about the Mountain West, but this is a good game. That said, I think Utah State's got a lot to make up for. They lost Jordan Love, first-round quarterback, and obviously that's going to hurt. And then they also lost stud linebacker David Woodward, who departed early for the NFL draft, and in 3 seasons compiled 15 double-digit tackle games, 2 of 20 plus in 3 seasons, which is pretty absurd. So I think they may have a little bit of star power departing, and they'll have to find themselves. So this is a tough first game, and I think the edge goes to Boise State because of experience on both sides of the ball. But I'm excited to see how a couple former Utes play, and Jason Shelley and Devontae Henry Cole, although he'll probably be backing up Jalen Warren at running back.
Yeah, you touched on it. This is actually one of the reasons you wanted us to talk about the game. For Utah fans, we both go to the University of Utah. Jason Shelley was filled in for Tyler Huntley when he went down with his injury, and led the Utes in probably one of the more memorable comebacks of his career so far, beating BYU down a bunch of scores at halftime. He played in the Pac-12 championship game against a really good Washington team. They hung around and they competed. A bad bounce, and they ended up losing the game on a pick six. That wasn't really his fault. So if you're going to replace someone like Jordan Love, Jason Shelley's not a bad play to go. He's underrated. He's small, but he's shown that he has the athletic ability. If he can get that decision-making to click in, to really be like, this is what I need to do, and get that football IQ up a little bit, I think he can really be a playmaker there at Utah State.
Yeah, for sure. And in the Pac-12, there's a little less time than even in the Mountain West. And I think Boise State is the best team in the Mountain West. So this might not be the game that showcases it, especially because it's the first game of the season. Obviously, there's jitters and everything that comes with the first game of the season. That said, I think Jason Shelley has a real chance to be the best quarterback in the Mountain West this season. I think he could have some explosive stats because he's got a dual threat. He's very athletic, and he was an all-state performer in football, baseball, and basketball for his high school in Texas. So he's clearly got some talent, and they have some weapons that are underrated as well.
For sure. They're not the only ones bringing in some talent to the offense. So Boise State QB Hank Bachmeier and George Holani, those are both returning in the backfield. So they have some serious experience and playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. And they do as well on the defensive side of the ball. That defense is very experienced. So look for that to be a really stout test for Jason Shelley and former Ute Devontae Henry Cole if he sees the field much in that opener there in the Mountain West. So those are our games that we're going to preview this week. We're going to move into our pick section now. So let's have some fun here. We've been centered around the Big Ten majority through these first 2 episodes. Let's start there. We're going to start at noon. Number 5, Ohio State at home against Nebraska. Who you got there?
No surprise here. I wish I could say the Cornhuskers gave them much of a game, but I think Ohio State's going to blow the doors off the Cornhuskers.
Yeah, I think Justin Fields is going to come out looking for blood. Nebraska was a college game day game last season, if I remember correctly. They had a lot of hype around Nebraska and Scott Frost, but I'm with you. I think Ohio State wins this one running away. I
think Ohio State and Ryan Day, they might be the most talented roster on paper, even above Clemson and Alabama, and they're hungry. They had a questionable call with Jeff Okudah in the college football playoff semifinal against Clemson. They're coming out for blood. I fully expect them to be a playoff team by the end of the season.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of expectations around Ohio State there. Let's move to the number 1 team in the land. They're taking on Syracuse, which they've given them games the past few seasons. They've taken them down to the wire. I think they're ready for them this year. I think Clemson's probably the best team in the country. So who you got there?
Definitely taking Clemson. The spread's at 46 for this game, and I think they're going to win big, but I'm not sure they'll cover a 46-point spread for college football bettors.
Yeah, they scored 75 last weekend, though, against Wake Forest, so nothing out of the picture. I got Clemson big as well here. A top 25 matchup we didn't cover, NC State's going into North Carolina, who lost last weekend. Who you got there?
I think if North Carolina had won comfortably, I think they'd be a little complacent. And I would have taken North Carolina State because I like the way they play. They've since an early loss, they've came back out and played with the new quarterback Leary, and they've had good offense and a pretty stout defense. That said, I think I'm going to take Mac Brown and North Carolina at home in a rivalry game, just because you get a little bit of fan support there, and they're going to be motivated after a really bad game against Florida State.
Yeah, I agree. Close, real close, real close. North Carolina at home, though. I'm going with that. We give a big shout out to Coastal Carolina in our news episode last Tuesday. So we're gonna pick their game this weekend. They're at home against Georgia Southern, number 25 Coastal Carolina. Who you got?
I'm rolling with Coastal Carolina.
Yeah, same here. I think you have to. I think to do anything but pick with them is just a crime. So I'm going Coastal Carolina as well.
I hope they move up the poll. That would be cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool to see them get on a little run. But all right, so a game we previewed for JT, number 2 Alabama at Tennessee.
Yeah, I got to go Bama. I think Jalen Waddle and Najee Harris and Devontae Smith are that's probably the best trio of playmakers in the land. And I don't think Tennessee's got what it takes. I think they'll be able to score, but this may well be like a 50-25 type of game.
Yeah.
They'll win by a few scores.
Yeah, I think a touchdown late in the second half puts Alabama up by like 2 or 3 scores, and then it's a blowout from there on. I think Tennessee could compete for like a quarter, but from there on, I think it's going to be all Bama. So I got Bama in that one as well. Number 17 Iowa State at number 6 Oklahoma State. Who you got?
I think I'm riding with the home team in Stillwater. Coach Gundy's going to have them going. Chuba Hubbard and underrated playmaker that we didn't mention earlier was Tylan Wallace. He's got 17 yards per catch, and he's a big-time playmaker for the Cowboys. So I'm riding with the home team.
I'm going to go against you on this one. I think I got to pick one upset this docket. I'm going Iowa State. I think Brock Purdy has always showed he can show up and beat the big team. So I'm going Iowa State to add to the chaos that's already happening in the Big 12. All right, Penn State at Indiana.
I think this game's more interesting than it would seem because Penn State lost Journey Brown, sadly. He's out with a medical condition that we briefly touched on. It's all speculation that we talked about in our last episode. But Indiana's played Penn State close, and it's also in Bloomington. That said, I'll take Penn State, but not by too much.
I got Penn State probably by a comfortable 2 scores. I think they'll probably start slow, but I think Sean Clifford and that offense will really start hitting their groove. And watch out for no Micah Parsons on that Penn State defense. He opted out this year, so that's a big loss for that defense. Probably was shooting to be a first-team All-American this season, so big loss there. Might have some holes to fill. For Tavis, Utah State at Boise State.
I got to go with Boise State. Like you said, they're very experienced on both sides of the ball, and they're also playing at home on the Smurf turf. I think that's a little too much to overcome for a lot of moving pieces at Utah State under Coach Gary Anderson. I really like this Utah State Aggie team, but I think Boise State's experience will prevail in this initial matchup.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We said we're going to try and keep bias out of this game. I'm sorry, Tav. I love you, buddy, but I'm going Boise State as well. I know you're a big Jason Shelley guy, but I think there's just too much talent on both sides of the ball for Boise State, and they're getting Utah State at home. I'm going Boise State in this one. Sorry, buddy. All right. One of the games we previewed heavily, Cincinnati SMU. Who you got?
I'm going with SMU. I'm rolling with Shane Buechele. I think he's the better quarterback of the two. And for me, when there's a close game, I typically like to take the team with the better quarterback. And Buechele's really talented. They've also got Ulysses Bentley, the 4th at running back, which we briefly touched on. I think at home they're going to score enough points, and their defense has missed out on some plays. They've dropped some interceptions, and I think Cincinnati hasn't played a team like SMU yet. The best team they've played is Navy, and Navy was throttled by BYU, who's also a solid team. But SMU is a little more battle-tested and playing at home.
Going against you again, Cincinnati's defense makes the play of the game. They win the game late. Hammer the over. We're going higher. Higher than 56. Hammer the over in that one. All right.
I agree on that front.
We've come down to it. The game of the week this week, number 18 Michigan at number 21 Minnesota. Let's hear your thoughts and your pick on that one, and let's get a score for this one.
Yeah, I'm taking the lower ranked team Minnesota at home. I think they've got the better quarterback. As I said last time, I'm rolling with Tanner Morgan, Rashad Bateman. That they've got a nice rapport in a game that might be ugly. I'd rather have a quarterback that I can trust when you need a third down. The running game is going to be the big key in this. Whoever's offensive line can control the line of scrimmage, and vice versa with the defensive lines. Whoever can stop the run is going to have the best chance. So I'm gonna take the team with an experienced quarterback who had threw 30 touchdowns last season. So I'm rolling with Minnesota. I'm gonna say 27-20.
That's fair. I'm also going Minnesota. I'm going higher than you, though, 35-21. Here's why. Play action. Rashad Bateman's going to have some big plays down the field. Minnesota's going to establish the run, and then they're going to hit some deep bombs over the top with the more experienced quarterback, which you touched on. And I don't think Michigan's going to be able to have those kind of big plays that you need to have in a game where there's bad weather, bad things can happen. I'm going to also put a book note on, keep an eye on special teams. I think whoever can win the special teams battle is going to win the game, but I got Minnesota by 2 scores in that one big to open the season.
That's a big gap there. I'm impressed with that pick. One thing to touch on we didn't talk about is PJ Fleck mentioned that Minnesota did have some coronavirus cases. He didn't say they'd be missing many players, but he didn't specify which players. So these projections are assuming that most of their starters are playing. Because we haven't heard it otherwise.
Yeah, you're going to break that out on me now after I already picked them winning by 2 touchdowns? Come on, man. No, that's all good. I'll stick with my boys by 2 touchdowns against Michigan.
I just heard some breaking news. I was trying to help our fans.
No, we appreciate the news for sure. That's what we're all about. All right, guys, that's it for us in this preview episode. Once again, thank you so much for all your support these past few days. It's meant so much. It's meant so much to both of us, and we're gonna do everything that we can to keep producing a good product for you. And let us know if you see any games of the weekend that you want us to recap for you. We'll be happy to do that. And just have fun on your college Saturday, Friday, whatever night you want to watch college football, preferably both of them. But yeah, have fun, guys. Take care.
Yeah, have a good one, guys. Thank you.